Hello students, I am Ishwar. For your convenience, we have divided the polity syllabus into micro topics. We all know polity is very important for your prelims and mains. So the entire topics will be dealt in a micro topic fashion. Okay, we said in the earlier classes, in the Act of 1909 through Minto-Morley reforms, the Britishers are given a separate electorate for Muslims and landlords. So we thought, and then India was agitating against them, but they are supposed to stop that electorate, but they have extended that electorate to Sikhs, Christians, Indian Christians, etc. In this backdrop, we will discuss the features of the Government of India Act 1919. Okay, so let us have a look at the prelims based question. The question is, the Indian legislature was made bicameral, that is bicameral for the first time by which act? Answers are Indian Council Act 1892, Indian Council Act 1909, the Government of India Act 1919, and the Government of India Act 1935. Okay, the bicameralism was introduced for the first time by the Act of 1919. So remember always, bicameralism was introduced by 1919. Diarchy was introduced by 1919. The subjects were divided into provincial and central subjects through the Act of 1919. Okay, here the answer is C, the Act of 1919, through which bicameralism was introduced for the first time. Okay, let's have a look at second question. Which of the following statements about the Government of India Act 1919 is not correct? Okay, option 1, it extended the practice of communal representation. It made the central executive responsible to the legislature. It is also known as Montague-Chelmsford reforms. It paved the way for federalism by clearly separating the responsibilities of the center and provinces. So we have to identify which is not correct. That means eliminate the correct option. It has introduced separate electorate. Yes. So eliminate. It made the central executive responsible. No, it did not make. So this should be the answer. So this is the incorrect statement. And option C is Montague-Chelmsford. It is correct. And D, it paved the way for federalism. Correct. So the incorrect option is B. Okay. Now let us go back to the content. The Government of India Act 1919. It is also called Montague-Chelmsford Report. This Chelmsford, he is the Secretary of State, and Montague was the Viceroy. This gentleman is Montague, the Viceroy. This gentleman is Chelmsford, the Secretary of State, who is a member of British Parliament, and this guy controls this guy. Okay. This was called the 1919 Government of India Act is called Montague-Chelmsford reforms, which you have to remember for your prelims. Okay, in the background, what was happening during 1919? 1915, a great man came to India. Who is he? Gandhiji came to India from South Africa in the year 1915 on January 9th. This January 9th is celebrated as Pravasi Bharati Divas till date. Okay, why was Gandhi so important? What did he do great? What did Gandhi do was, he made us to move from a slave or from a colony to an independent country. Okay, we are a colony now. From here, we have to become sovereign. So how will you become? How will you educate? From here, we became a dominion in between. The literacy during 1919 was around 6%. That means out of 100 people, only 6 are educated. Gandhi took the job of educating everybody and saying that we need to be independent. He was the mass leader. So that was the role being played by Gandhi in the years 1919. And then on August 20, 1917, the British declared that they'll introduce a responsible government. And then the Government of India Act 1919 was enacted, which came into force in 1921. Okay, let's look at the features of the act. It separated or demarcated, separated central and provincial subjects. What did it do? Let us say okay, this is the British rule territory. The center can legislate on these central subjects, defense, war, all these things. Whereas the provinces, they can legislate on their provincial subject. This was demarcated for the first time through this act of 1919. Remember, 1919 always talks about two things: central and provincial subjects. Okay, next what did it do? It transferred the reserve subjects into transferred and reserved subjects in provinces. Okay. In the provinces, the subjects were divided into, let's say this is Madras province. Here it said you'll have two subjects. One is transferred, one is reserved. What is the subject here? Subject is, for example, municipal administration is a subject. Finance is a subject. So public works is a subject. So these are subjects. So this act divided the subjects into transferred and reserved subjects, especially in provinces. So these transferred subjects where the ministers are responsible to the legislative council. In this transferred subjects, there is responsibility. Here, not responsible. Reserved subjects are reserved for the executive council without being responsible to the legislative council. Okay, what are the reserved subjects here? Like finance is reserved from all the money making things were reserved for the British, and the administrative things were transferred to us. And then it also introduced diarchy or rule by two. 1919 is always about two things. Rule by two, diarchy. How? By introducing transferred and reserved subjects. Okay, what is the next thing? What did the 1919 Act do? Again, two things. They said you'll have two houses. One is upper house and lower house. What is the upper house? Present upper house is Rajya Sabha, present lower house is Lok Sabha. Similarly, they had two houses then, which was introduced by 1919, and this is called bicameralism. Two. And it also introduced direct elections, where only at center. For example, India had direct elections, and let's say provinces, no elections, no direct elections. Okay, this was introduced by the 1919 Act. Okay, three out of the 6 members of the Viceroy's Executive Council will be Indians. Earlier it said 1 out of the 6 will be Indians of the Executive Council. Who was it? It was Satyendra Prasad Sinha, who was the first law member. But this Act of 1919 said now it will be 3 out of 6 members will be Indians in Executive Council, in the Viceroy's Executive Council. Okay, and then it said, again the Britishers, till now they have given us carrots, right? They said you'll have bicameralism, you'll have two subjects, all these are carrots. And they follow the stick method, right? So they said the separate electorate will be extended to 6, to Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians, and Europeans. All these things, Christians will vote for Christians, Anglo-Indians will vote for Anglo-Indians, Europeans will vote for Indo-Europeans, Muslims will vote for Muslims, Sikhs will vote for Sikhs. So this was extended. Okay? So they always followed a policy of divide and rule. The next act was the franchise. It granted a limited franchise. What is the franchise here? It is, you can vote. Can everybody vote in British India? No, only few people were given the right to vote. If you're educated, you can vote. Oh, you're paying tax, you can vote. You have a property, you can vote. If you're poor, you cannot vote. So British gave a limited franchise. This limited franchise was given to the Act of 1919. And apart from this, as I said always, 1919 is of two things. So we had a Secretary of State. They said some functions of the Secretary of State will be given to a new office, that is High Commissioner, of India, this High Commissioner sits in London, and then he'll perform some functions of the Secretary of State for India. Okay, and then it established a public service commission. It established a Central Public Service Commission, which is your UPSC now. For what? For, in 1926, for recruiting civil servants. So when was the Central Public Service Commission established? In the year 1926. Okay. The next features of the Act, it separated for the first time, again 1919 is of two things. What did it do again? It said the budget will be divided. Okay, you only have a central budget, we'll divide it into provincial budget and central budget. And it also authorized the provincial budget, legislature, they can enact their own budgets. So you remember in 1909, you can ask certain questions. You can pass a resolution on budget. But now, in 1919, it is a huge development that the provinces can enact their own budget. You have to remember it. It is important. So it separated the budget into provincial and central, and the provinces can enact their budgets. Okay, the next provision is appointment of statutory committee or a statutory commission to inquire and report on the workings of it after 10 years. Let us say they said we have passed these acts, diarchy, bicameralism, all these things, and then we will check how this is going to perform by sending a statutory committee. This statutory committee is called Simon Commission. Okay. So now let us have a look at a mains-based question. What circumstances led to the enactment of Government of India Act 1909 and 1919, and compare and contrast their salient features? What is the question asking? It is saying, what are the circumstances that led to the passage or enactment of 1909 Act and 1919 Act, and compare these two. Okay, so you'll always introduce. So you'll introduce by saying the Government of India Act 1909 was passed and 1919 was passed as Chelmsford reforms, and then introduced by diarchy, bicameralism, all these things. And in the body, you will write first part. There are two parts. First part is asking about circumstances. So what are the political circumstances? 1905 division of Bengal, 1907 Muslim League was formed, 1885 Congress was formed. All these were asking for a representative government, provincial autonomy or else. And this is the political circumstances. Socially, what is there? People are become aware. There was pride in the Indian culture. They want to establish, they want to have their own freedom. So these are the circumstances. This is the first part. In the second part, it is asking about compare and contrast the salient features. Let us say you will compare 1909 with 1919. Let us say there is a budget. Here you can ask question in 1909. Whereas in 1919, you can frame your own provincial budget or enact, let us say. So there is bicameralism. There is diarchy. So that is how you compare, and you can write the differences as well and conclude on a positive note always. So okay students, thank you for listening. We'll meet in the next class.